Why does everyone hate Shrek the Third? No less than 12 years have passed since the release of the third film about Shrek on the big screen. But for many film critics and film reviewers, this movie is still a nightmare. So why is it that everyone cares so much and does not like it after all this time? In order to have a complete picture of what is happening and get imbued with the creation of Shrek, I recommend that you first take a look at the review of the first and second parts, link here and in the description box. Shrek as the work of art was unique in its kind and the time of its release, clearly and distinctly opposing itself to Disney, in which beauty, songs, dances were an integral part of the narrative. Shrek in its all essence was a parody and protest which attracted so much attention to it. Overt satire, adult humor, and mockery of Disney, this was all in the first part. You grew up, review Shrek, and at some point you noticed that humor that you didn't really want to notice. After the incredible success of the first part, the creation of the second was only a matter of time, because inadvertently DreamWorks found a gold mine, and in general the highest ranks of DreamWorks did not hide the monetary side of the issue. The film was originally due out in November 2006, but in December 2004 the date was changed to May 2007. The sheer size of the Shrek franchise has led us to believe that a May release date with a DVD release during the holiday season will allow us to maximize productivity and increase profitability, thereby creating better asset values and better returns for our shareholders, Jeffrey Katzenberg said. I like that he talks so openly about the money side of the issue. Indeed, in fact, it's obvious, and there's nothing wrong with that. The second part turned out to be very interesting, complementing and completing the love line of Fiona and Shrek. Everything was in its place: disclosure of the characters, their arcs, answers to the questions and concerns to the audience, new characters and their stories, and invariable value for any audience. It is possible that due to the way the second part turned out, many people had a strong rejection and denial towards Shrek the Third. But let's delve a little deeper into the creation of Shrek the Third. Look at it a little from the other side and draw conclusions at what point everything went wrong. And is it really that bad? Following the success of Shrek 2 in May 2004, Jeffrey Katzenberg announced the third and fourth Shrek films, as well as plans for the final fifth film. Shrek 3 and Shrek 4 are set to reveal other unanswered questions, and finally, in the last chapter, we will understand how Shrek ended up in the swamp when we meet him in the first film, he said. Unlike the first two films, the director was not Andrew Adamson due to his occupation in the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Adamson continued to serve as an executive producer and patronized every 4 months about the film condition. Shrek the Third was instead directed by Chris Miller, the story artist for the first film and a chapter of the story for the second, as well as co-director Raman Huey, the supervising animator for the first two films. The film was developed under the title Shrek 3. By March 2006 it was renamed Shrek the Third. According to Miller, they didn't want just some sort of title, like it's just a sequel. They wanted something to make it stand out, give it its own personality, and really try to see it as a chapter in Shrek's life. He remarked, "This is about Shrek becoming the new king of the far, far away. The name is also similar to the royal one." I won't say that it was not obvious, but in general it really attracts attention. This was most likely a key marketing focus. The film was released to wide distribution in the United States on May 18, 2007, exactly 6 years after the release of the first part. In its first weekend in the United States, the film grossed $122 million, setting a record for animated films and showing the third highest ever full-length film record. Only Spider-Man 3 and Pirates of the Caribbean at the World's End had more impressive box office returns, although some sources say that Shrek got in fourth place, including Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix on the list. As in the first two parts, very few compositions were written for Shrek the Third, unless the accompanying main theme, and popular melodies and songs by pop artists were used, which, as in the case of All Stars, became even more popular or gained popularity with the release of the film. It has become a good tradition in Hollywood to deliver films to cinemas under fake names, so as not to attract the attention of overly zealous fans who even before the premiere know everything that is to know about the film. The cartoon was delivered to cinemas under the fake name Stone. That was news to me, I never heard about that before. With the budget of $160 million, the cartoon Shrek the Third grossed a little less than $800 million worldwide, a little short of the success of the second part, which collected nearly $920 million. DreamWorks approached the creation of Shrek the Third with all seriousness. The most cash cow in the herd could not lose face, and even therefore, more efforts were made to create the third part of the famous franchise than to the previous two combined. About 350 people were working on Shrek the Third. There were many specific technical advancements on the movie, including advancements in hair, clothing, costuming, and crowds, as well as bringing the secondary character animations to a whole new level of performance. In Shrek the Third, Fiona transforms a baby of classic Rescue Me fairy tale princess into action figures to defend the kingdom of far, far away from Prince Charming. How to convert Sleeping Beauty's narcolepsy into a weapon or get knee-free Snow White to dirty her nails fighting bad guys seems like minor challenges compared to the technical obstacles involved, the creators comment. Long flowing hair and running in long dresses have been a key focus of animation and design work. Andrew Pierce leads the DreamWorks Animation R&D group based at PDI. Long hair may be the biggest technology advance in Shrek Third. In all of the animation in the past, you've seen long hair very little. It took months to do the hero hair flick on Shrek 2, notes visual effects supervisor Philip Gluckman. Hair is everywhere in Shrek Third. How hair glides across a shoulder looks easy, but it's very complicated to model. The way the hair moves had to become much more automated, says Gluckman. There is no time for animators to position each hair by hand. With clothing, we have more interactions, including ripping of the cloth. Fast motion is always difficult. In the real world, there is only so fast you can move, but nobody has told our animators that. If you went from 0 to 500 miles per hour in a second, you'd probably leave some clothing behind in the real world. Animation reality is as much art as physics. I have a feeling that they've made living trees purely to show off. Look, they say, how we can create textures. Rapunzel has moles as well as Arthur, and Gwen's friend has pimples on her face. I am amazed how much people care. Despite all the difficulties and still novelty of 3D modeling, Shrek the Third looks impressive even now. The quality of the graphics is at the highest level and the viewer is not distracted by any flaws or glitches or something like that. Everything looks natural and, most importantly, imperceptible to the average viewer. The story that Shrek the Third tells is probably known to everyone. King Harold dies, leaving the kingdom to Shrek and Fiona, but Shrek does not want to rule the country, so he goes for the heir to the throne. At the time, Prince Charming tries to seize the throne that belongs to him by right.
I am the rightful king of far, far away.
Here comes the main trigger. The audience is outraged that Harold is no longer there. Lillian is present in the frame only from time to time, and Artie does not fit to being the king. Well, you find fault, I would say, if I myself did not do it too. So now let's take a look at the characters and how they have changed. I just drew attention to the fact that Charming was trying to live an ordinary life. He found himself a job to his liking, but the same society of which the former outcast from the swamp became a part drives him out without even giving a chance. It would seem that they have already forgotten what it is like to be deviants and begun to humiliate those who, in their opinion, have no chance of redemption. Now I feel even more sorry for Charming. Indeed, the characters in the film turned out to be a little contradictory. I feel like the writers are trying to justify the behavior of our bunch of losers, I mean fabulous creatures like Pinocchio, Ginger, and so on, which do not give the right for rehabilitation to Prince Charming at the beginning of the film, and supposedly he really turns out to be a nefarious villain at the end. But at the same time, all other fabulous villains are forgiven for their crimes. Although many have done things that are generally not worthy of forgiveness, they also came too far, far away with Charming. Rob and kill and so on, while personally Charming did not do it. Seriously, watching this film, I was only soaked with pity for Charming. Wow, they brought that person to despair. He has no place anywhere in this world. And at the end, they nailed him with the tower. What is it anyway? At the time, Shrek, already feeling safe in general, behaves quite carelessly. He doesn't want to take responsibility for either the kingdom or the child. He was really lucky that Fiona decided to tell him about the pregnancy just at the time of departure. After all, he had a moment of escape from himself and circumstances, and he did not do stupid things, which is already good. But overall, the film goes deeper into the character. We're shown Shrek from the inside, the moment when he can tell about himself that he never said to the viewer, about his vulnerability. And I do not blame Shrek for being afraid of the appearance of the children. I would also be afraid if I were in his place. By communicating with Arthur, Shrek realizes that having a child is not the end of the world. The fosters self-confidence in Artie and returns to his family. Fiona. Not to say that I expected something supernatural from Fiona. Yes, in general, I did not receive any. She was both a strong and independent woman in the first film, and has remained so to this day, just on a larger scale. She would be a beautiful queen if her husband wasn't who he is. And I don't mean the fact that he is an ogre, but that he still hasn't learned to take responsibility, with a little childish, I don't want to, and I won't position. It's very funny that in the second part, Fiona had a poster in the room with Sir Justin, and in the third part, he was called to the voice acting of Arthur. Well, and obviously, the character was made to look like him. Arthur Pendragon. In the cartoon, time is devoted to the characters of Shrek and Charming. Arthur also goes through his emotional path, but more behind the scenes than in it. Artie is a typical teenager, an archer's loser who is extremely lucky in life. Yes, there is a difficult family drama behind this, but he overcomes it and becomes a young king. Good or bad, we will not know. In general, I had a feeling that the people of the kingdom didn't even realize that they were taking Artie seriously as a king. They're, oh, what a wonderful performance! What a soulful end! Princesses and Queen Lillian. The queen was not enough in this film, but I liked the moment with breaking the wall with her head. In fact, it confirms that I said in the review of the first and second parts. And besides, it adds physical strength to the merits of Lillian. Princesses were kind of a background. Each of them got a gag and everyone was happy with it. But of course, the scene with the singing of Snow White takes a special place. Magical animals and others. Also background. They are there, but they're not. And even this time, the cat and the donkey fade a little into the background. Yes, they're present, they have jokes and remarks, but in general, the film is not about them. Yes, it turned out quite funny when Merlin changed their bodies, but not enough to take the significant place in the picture. In the film, locations change quickly. It's great because the picture is nice to watch, but at the same time a bit less action than in previous parts and more inner experiences. And I won't even condemn it. After all, as the separate film, Shrek works well. And what do you think? Let me know in the comments. The Blu-ray edition offers the viewer a lot of additional content. It is of course a little of dubious quality, but for the sake of curiosity, you can take a look. I found it for you. Links are in the description box. After the release of Shrek the Third, many began to say that it was time for the franchise to think about retiring. I can understand that. After all, the novelty from the bright and daring appearance of an unusual character has passed. And the new Shrek went in the direction of development of a character who has found a family and is no longer looking for adventure and is not trying to resist society. Shrek the Third is not about Shrek. He's pushed, even if not into the background, but other characters interfere with his story, who lead their own line, who have their own arc. Shrek is no longer the central character of the story. He no longer leads the story. He is also subject to circumstances and other people, and also to his own fears and experiences. The biggest problem is that people are comparing Shrek the Third to Shrek Second, but it's not right. Shrek 2 went along with the first part, they complemented each other perfectly, and made up a kind of complete story. The history of formation of Shrek as a member of society, and his acceptance of himself and the attitude of others to himself, as well as the acceptance of Shrek by these people. Setting priorities and points on and in relationship with Fiona and even Donkey to some extent. And it ended. This chapter is over. Now Shrek is a family man. Shrek who no longer rushes to rescue but primarily thinks about the safety of the family and its comfort. As Jeffrey Katzenberg said, this is the new chapter of Shrek 3 and Shrek 4. Shrek has grown up. He has new problems and concerns. The character has evolved and has become uninteresting to the viewer, and this is not the fault of the character himself, and there's not even the viewer's fault. It's just that circumstances have developed and it just needs to be accepted. Perhaps, and I will not even try to justify it, the dubbing influenced my perception. Russian dubbing, at least in the first two parts, is much better than the original. Forgive me, this is an absolutely subjective opinion, but I have never seen Shrek the Third in the original dubbing. And now I'm inclined to believe that this is more of a plus. Another thought that came to my mind is that many people did not like the death of King Harold, and yes, this is the saddest part of the film. It literally leaves an unpleasant residue for a good 10 minutes at least. But this is part of life, and it's hardly worth transferring an impression of one scene to the entire film as a whole. I searched on all sorts of sites and read people's reviews about Shrek the Third, well, to put together a picture of what is happening for myself. Why, in fact, is Shrek the Third disliked? I did not find any specifics in the reviews. There are words like charm and cordiality, but this is more about the atmosphere and the individual's perception of the movie, and it doesn't make it bad just because. To be honest, I had a thought that writing this essay could change my attitude towards Shrek the Third, but this did not happen. I still love it with all my heart. Moreover, over the years, the third part has been my favorite. Therefore, I advise everyone to watch or revise Shrek the Third. It deserves it. And my channel deserves to be subscribed on. Watch only good movies that make your heart believe in magic.